Here. Now it is. Yeah. Right. So
Hey,
what you're
everybody, start over.
what you're
Yeah, I missed it. Sorry.
what you're seeing, hello Susan. What you're seeing here is God coming, or the angels coming to Abraham in the daytime, which tells you something about his character. He's a person of the light. He is a faithful person. He is dedicated to God. He's committed to God. He is trying to live his life in relationship to God. Versus Lot, where they come to him in the evening, and you have to realize it's coming near down to sundown, or sunset, and it tells you about his relationship with God, and his own relation and his own character is one of darkness. His is where and this is where the two differences of the two men, Abraham and Lot, will play out even in this chapter, where Lot is going to be seen. Remember when in the last chapter we read, in chapter 18, Lot was and God had this conversation about how many righteous people would he save. And he started off with 50 and 40 and 30 and 20 and 10. And he stopped there. And you realize God was willing to um hear him, and to even um uh, what's the word I want, to even try to show him, I am willing to give you what you're asking for. And so you see that relationship, that faithful relationship, because to me, as I always keep saying, our relationship with God is twofold. It's not what God gives us and we take. We also have to be in a relationship, and you see that from Abraham, where he has been faithful to God, and now God is giving back to him. God is being there for him, and versus now you tend to see where Lot is, that Lot's whole life is filled with all that surrounds him in Sodom. It's an evil place. It's wicked people, and this whole darkness thing shows too that even although you will see later on that in the past, if you didn't catch it, you will see later on that Lot really, he got saved, but he wasn't, isn't sure if he was well, he certainly wasn't as good a man as Abraham, for sure. But you will find that when you get down, I think into verse 29, it will tell you that God really saved Lot because of Abraham. That's the long and short of it. Not necessarily that because he was all this righteous a man. Um, God saved him because of Abraham. And this is something that we have to recognize. And God still does that. He does good for others because of somebody else, who have been petitioning on their behalf. And so you will see that come out in the chapter. So we have this difference between the two characters and their relationship with God. Abraham has one character, a character of light, the heat of the day. Lot has a different character, a different relationship with God. And so it's marked by darkness because of who he is and where he is. So I wanted to point that out to you first and foremost. Then you see this whole notion of hospitality. Both of them showed hospitality. Abraham showed hospitality, to the men when they came, and he got his wife to bake bread and food, and he got the servant to go and kill a heifer or whatever it was, and make and prepare a meal for them. Um, you see it with Lot. when you go into verse 2, my lords, he said, please turn aside to your servant's house. You can wash your feet and spend the night and then go on your way early in the morning. And then you see back, and I'll skip that part because I'm going to come back to it. Then you see in verse 3, but he insisted so strongly that they go with him and enter his house, and he prepared a meal for them, baking bread without yeast, and they ate. So you see, a lot does a similar thing. Some translations say that his servants did it. Most translations say that he's the one who prepared the meal. And so you see this whole notion of hospitality being important again in this chapter. The other part that I will mention too about Lot is that seeing Lot sitting in the gateway of the city. Now, when you hear about the gateway of the city, that was a place where, like, the city councilors will meet and they will have their meetings and transact business and all of that. It was near the entrance to the city, and it is quite likely that Lot too was a member of that council that was in charge of the city, because we find him sitting at the gateway of the city, and that is often perceived as the place where both administratively, judicially, where matters were discussed and dealt with. So it is quite possible that Lot had an important position in the city of Sodom. And then you will see in the ending of verse 2, it says, no, let me read for the whole of verse 2 so it makes sense. He says, my lords, he said, please turn aside to your servant's house. You can wash your feet and spend the night and then go on your way early in the morning. No, they answer, we will spend the night in the square. And the square, again, was a place where public gatherings would have been held, and it could have been fairly near to the gateway, and depending on how large some cities are, they may have more than one square. But it's like you're going to a small town and you hear this square, which is normally more, some of the times a roundabout, but they still call it a square, is the center of the city. And usually a monument is there and all that good stuff. Well, in this case, it would have been a place again for public gatherings to meet. And so you find that the men wanted to go to sleep in the square. Now, some person asked me this morning, why would they have wanted not to stay at a house when Lot invited them to his home? Why would they want to stay in the square in the night? And the reason for that is that they probably wanted to observe the people in the city, how they were moving around. It would have been a good vantage point for them to judge the behavior of the people of Sodom, and that is why they probably wanted to stay in the city. Bearing in mind, if these people were really angels, they don't need a house anyhow. So staying in the city, staying at the public square is perfectly fine, fine place for them to be, and a place that they can observe what is going on and so forth. So we get past this verse 3 where Lot prepares a meal, and then comes verse 4. Before they had gone to bed, all the men from every part of the city of Sodom, both young and old, surrounded the house. They called to Lot, where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us so that we can have, and my translation say, have sex with them. And then it continues, Lot went outside to meet them and shut the door behind him and said, no, my friends, don't do this wicked thing. Look, I have 2 daughters who have never slept with a man. Let me bring them out to you, and you can do what you like with them. But don't do anything to these men, for they have come under the protection of my roof. Now, And these verses 4 to verse 8, has been a bone of contention with scholars as to what this all means, and so I'm going to try to unpack it a little bit for you so that you have a better understanding. Um, now, now, one of the things we have to look at is what was really the reason why Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed. And the passage doesn't talk about Gomorrah, but obviously it was probably some kind of like a twin city to Sodom, and therefore it was also destroyed. They were very close together. Um, but the whole thing is what was really the reason, and based on scholars, there are some scholars who think, well, it was because of sexual morality, that is particular pertaining to homosexuality. Some think that it was a lack of hospitality. They were inhospitable people, and there are other scholars and people like myself who see other multiple things in addition to those things that took place, that led up to the whole destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Um, um, uh, as I mentioned, hold on a minute, Susan, hold your thought. As I mentioned, the whole notion of inhospitality, and also and that is shown from the example of Lot, of Abraham and Lot, how they were very hospitable to these men when they came. The belief is that in Sodom, people were not hospitable to other people. Obviously, the way how all these men rise up to come after these men, that will show you that they weren't that great hospital. They were not very hospitable to people. Also, the whole notion of there was much cruelty in the city, especially towards strangers. They were not hospitable to strangers, and they behaved cruelly to strangers. There is also the whole notion of pride and arrogance that came about from the people there. There was even belief that there was oppression of the poor and the vulnerable in the city, that there was social injustice in the city. And then there's the whole notion of the sexual immorality, the sexual transgressions, whether or not these men, when they came, the translations say, some translations say they wanted to know them. And in the Bible, in some translations, knowing a person in the Bible really meant you had sexual intimacy with them. So be careful how you go about telling people I know you, because because the word to know in the Bible really had a sexual connotation to it. And so some have believed, because of how these men came up to the people in at the house, at Lot's house, that there was that sexual immorality in the form of homosexuality. The fact is, though, you have to, and that is not to say that cannot have been part of it, but the fact is, though, is we have to have the notion that, okay, if it is sexual immorality, does that mean that the women were also sexual immoral as well? Were they also about same gender relationships? All of that comes into play, because if it was only based on one thing, and it's sexual immorality in the form of homosexuality, then why were the women killed? Why not only the men? God can do whatever He likes, and He could have killed all the men outside of Lot's house if He wanted to, since they all came from all parts of the thing. But the whole notion is, the belief is, that there were a number of reasons for the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. And even there's another question to beg that you could even ask, does God kill people for just one reason? And that's a question. And if, or for just one wrongdoing in that regard in those days. So I just want to bring up those kinds of things to you, because, and I also say to people, You know, if you're going to go at homosexuality in that form of sexual immorality, then you also have to go at fornication, for example. I mean, Exodus chapter 22 tells you about fornication, and even Deuteronomy chapter 22 speaks against fornication. And if this is the case, then we probably all going to hell. At some point. So you have to ask yourself as well, when you're talking about these about one thing, what happened to the other? Is it because it has become so complacent now that it's fine and we don't care about it, or adultery for that matter? So and Paul speaks about this in the New Testament as well, where he puts them all into the same bundle. So my obviously my when people speak about um, uh, uh, homosexuality or what have you, my point to them is always leave the judging to God and not to us. That is not what we're here about, because you may talk about them, or about homosexuality, but what happened to adultery? What happened to fornication? What happens to all of these, and where do people in relation to God, where they see them, when in truth and in fact in the Bible they are kind of seen as all part of the same thing. I mean, even the Ten Commandments will tell you you're not to commit adultery in that regard as well. So, yes, Susan.
Well, I kind of answered my own question. I wondered where the angels were during all of this but they mention it farther down. The angels that came to visit and all the men.
Oh, they were in the house at the time when this was happening.
Yeah, because I did review before I talked, because I just got here late.
Yeah, they were in the house. They were in the house when this happened. In Lot's house. Lot had already let them in, and they had had a meal and so forth. Yes,
So
yes,
I thought they had already left watching these.
No, they were there. They were there. They were there. They never even, by the time you will see later on, by the time they pronounce that God is going to destroy the whole place, they never even got to the square. I guess the men standing outside was enough to tell them what was going on.
No, thanks. Yeah, I read this a while ago. So, okay.
Yeah, they never got even to the square where they wanted to go in the first place. But yet they will pronounce, as you will see later on, without even having going to the square. They will do it in Lot's house, that God is going to destroy here. Yes. You had a question, Pam? Thanks. Oh, Marilyn.
Oh, yeah. When I read that Bible verse, it said that so they may know him carnally, CARNALLY. Mm-hmm. And it's in AI overview. It says in the Bible that means pertaining to the flesh, worldly desires, or natural human impulses, often in opposition to spiritual life, focusing on earthly things like envy, strife, lust, and selfishness instead of God's will, representing a state of spiritual immaturity or separation from God, as seen in Romans 8, where a carnal mind leads to spiritual death.
Yes, and I have no disagreement with what was said there either. I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier, that there's a whole combination of things that led to the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. And some of that could be the same envy that you just mentioned and that kind of thing. But we need to see it as not just one thing, as many people tend to want to think it is, but a number of things. It is not just one. Yes, George.
Going back a little bit earlier, when when Lot convinces the angels to go to his house, and he says, you can get up early and go in the morning. It sounds like Lot knew what was going to happen. He wanted to hide him in his house overnight and then get him the heck out of there.
You mean from the point of view that they would want to attack them. Correct. Well, I mean, he knew. I mean, he in that regard, not necessarily that God was going to destroy the place. Not necessarily. because the angels will tell him later on what is about to happen. But yes, he knew probably as has happened before in the city, and so he wanted to make sure that's why he came out, so that the people could not get into the house to take. So from that point of view, yes, it is quite possible that he knew what can happen. Yes, George.
Is there anything here with the unleavened bread? Isn't that what Abraham made his visitors? And isn't that Passover
Um,
bread?
well, Lot did. I don't think Abraham did. Let me get it. Let me make sure. I know Lot did.
Quick, get the sailors and fine flour and knead it and make some bread.
It doesn't say that he made it with unleavened bread, whereas it
Okay.
tells you that Lot did. That Lot, he prepared a meal baking bread without yeast, which makes it unleavened. Um, so it doesn't say the same in with Abraham's story.
Abraham.
So yeah, it doesn't say that.
But it does. It specifically does not mention yeast. So that's unleavened bread.
What is that?
Abraham tells Sarah, quick, get 3 seals of C's of the finest flour, knead it and bake some bread. That is unleavened bread.
Yes.
George is correct.
It also says in a footnote that I have, the plural word, the SEAHS, refers to round, thin loaves.
Refers to what, Marilyn?
The same verse 6. The word SEAHS,
Which one are we looking at again? Verse 6 it is?
verse 6 and 18, 18:6.
I mean, it is quite possible. I do not think, and the reason why I say it could be possible, if it was unleavened bread, the same way they said without yeast here for Lot, they probably would have said the same thing there for Abraham, and they do not. But I am not going to say that it isn't or it is. It is just that we know for sure with Lot that it was unleavened. With Abraham, that is not clear. That is not clear. It is possible.
I'm
but
not a
the
baker.
fact- Hmm?
I'm not a baker, but can you make unleavened bread quicker than you can make leavened bread?
Yes.
If you can make
Yes.
what? If you could do what?
I'm wondering if you can make unleavened bread faster than you can make leavened bread.
Yes.
Because
That is provided you don't have that is provided that you do not have the leaven already prepared. In those days, people would have had leaven prepared that could have gone into the bread the same time. It wasn't to say that they had then to go and make leaven. Leaven was something that people can make before the bread even was things, so that it could mobilize into that, because in those days it would have taken more than a day or hours to do. Yes.
but it takes time for that leaven to become a loaf that we know as a loaf of bread.
As I said,
Right.
I'm not saying that you're wrong, but I am just saying to you that and I'm saying we cannot be sure, because the fact that they use without yeast in Lot's case, I would think they would have probably used the same thing in Abraham's case, and they do
Well,
not.
just to be obstreperous, okay? We also think that Lot is a good man, a man who offers his daughters to be raped.
Well, we never said that. I never said that.
Oh, yes, it does. Oh, yes, it does.
Where does
I
it
have
say that
2
Lot was a good
daughters.
man?
I have 2
No.
daughters.
Where does it say that Lot was a good man? Where?
Oh, I thought you said he was a good man.
Oh, I
You,
never said
you
that.
said you said he
No,
was
I
saved
said-
by God because he was good.
No, I never said that.
No,
You see,
okay.
George
all
is
right.
shaking his head. No, I did
Okay,
not.
all right. I probably
was-
read
I
it in the commentary, which is very
I said,
Shall we
I
say,
said,
Bible
Lot.
says-
I said, when we get down to verse 29, you will see that Lot was saved because of Abraham. not because he was a good man. That's why I started off by talking about light and darkness.
Right. Okay.
Whereas Abraham was a man of the light, Lot was a
I
man
got
of the
it.
darkness. And
Yeah.
that's how I started off.
You are absolutely right. I read the commentary which says
Yeah.
verses 1 to 29, Lot was good. And he wasn't.
Well, I
He
don't think
wasn't.
that
I'm
I don't
sorry.
think that I don't think that Lot was a good man. He may not be as bad as the others,
Right.
but I do not think, I think personally, if not for it coming down to 10 and because of Abraham's faithfulness to God, which is, even I said earlier too, I said it still happens to people today, where you can pray to God for somebody who may not be a good person, but God does work in their life because of you being the good person.
Gotcha. Okay.
Go ahead,
Okay.
George.
Because I don't like Lot.
Uh,
Verse 29, I mean, I'll let you speak, George. Verse 29 tells you it right there. So when God destroyed the cities of the plain, he remembered Abraham and he brought Lot out of the catastrophe that overthrew the cities where Lot had lived. It was God remembered Abraham because of his faithfulness. Go ahead, George. Sorry.
it says all the men of the city gathered around. So does that mean that Lot's two son-in-laws would have been
It
out
is,
there too?
it is quite possible. It is quite possible. The fact that they thought he was joking about the destruction of the city, it is quite possible. It is quite possible. And which also tells you that Lot had no moral, what's that said? Not to use the word authority, but you'll get what I mean. No moral authority even over members of his family. Even over members of his family. And I mean, if it is quite possible that he had other daughters, which means that they also got burned up in the smoke. Because if we claim that these two daughters were getting married to these two men, and it was not the ones that were in the house, then even them end up in smoke as well. You see, and it also brings you back to show you even the two daughters live in the house aren't morally okay either, because they're going to commit incest with their father. You get what I'm saying? So it tells you the same thing with Lot's wife. She couldn't give up what she had before, so she turned back and she turned into a pillar of salt. So you will find that Lot, even Lot leaving Sodom, and we haven't got into that yet, but even Lot's leaving Sodom, the angels told them, go north, go to the mountains, which is where Abraham was, which is where the presence of God is. And he refused. He headed further south, more down to Zoar. Again, it tells you the kind of person Lot was. That Lot wanted to get away as far from God as possible. Yes, George.
Okay, I'm going to preface this with if.
Okay.
If their sin was rampant immorality, and by that, I think there's a difference when you sin and you know you did something wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and when you sin and you convince yourself it's something right.
Mm-hmm.
And the poor treatment of the lack of hospitality.
Mm-hmm.
When I look at modern America, the way we're treating our immigrants,
Mm-hmm.
when I look at modern America in the way that anything goes,
Mm-hmm.
personal freedom,
Mm-hmm.
I don't see much difference between us and Sodom.
I will tell you this. I mean, I'm not going to go as far as you have, but I do agree with you as far as when it comes to hospitality towards strangers. And this is something, and immigrants and foreigners, this is something that you see a lot in, is that Lot's wife with salt? I don't see base I mean, yes, you want to have legal immigrants, but the way how you're dealing with it and treating people, I am sure the Lord is not pleased with. That is not the way he expects people to be treated. These are still people who are made in his image and likeness, just like the same people who are doing it. And therefore, I cannot see God being pleased with something like this. So I do agree with that wholeheartedly.
Pam, do you like that pillar of salt?
Huh?
Pam, do you like that pillar of salt?
Oh, behind her.
Oh yeah, the pillar of salt behind her. Yeah, she's one of this. So, but let's move on. Let's move on. Where was I? But as I said, George, I agree with you in that regard. Um,
And having grown up on a farm, the animals all come to the salt and lick the pillar of salt. I can.
oh, that's what
My mind went there.
mine tells you that.
Having known that
Yes.
the cows go to the salt lick and go and, I'm just
Yes.
thinking they had a fun time.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I think we're on verse 8, right?
Hmm?
Are we on 8?
Yeah, we're going to verse 9 now.
Okay.
So in verse 9, get out of our way, they replied, and they said, this fellow came here as an alien, and now he wants to play the judge. We'll treat you worse than them. And again, now the men are referring to Lot himself, because you have to remember when Lot went to that area, there were people already living there. Yes, he took his choice and he decided he wanted to go there because it looked more beautiful than up in the mountains where Abraham ended up. But there were people already living here, and now you're hearing them talk about they're calling him an alien. So you see the hospitality or the inhospitable nature of the people even coming out in that context. This fellow came here as an alien, and now he wants to play the judge, and so you see that that coming out there where they were being inhospitable. And they even said, we'll treat you worse than them. So you can imagine how badly this could get in that time. And that is why a lot of people, see it more as the way of the treatment of the people rather than sexual immorality. But I think it may have been it would have been a bit of both and all kinds of other things as well. And then you see they kept bringing pressure on Lot and moved forward to break down the door, but the men inside reached out and pulled Lot back into the house and shut the door. Then they struck the men who were at the door of the house, young and old, with blindness, so that they could not find the door. So here is it now that the men outside, have been punished. They are now all blind. So just imagine you're getting burnt up and you're blind. You can't even see what's going on. You can't even run anywhere. It must be a painful situation. And you see that come in there. Was there something else I wanted to mention? No, right. In verse 12, the two men said to Lot, do you have anyone else here, sons-in-law, sons or daughters, or anyone else in the city who belongs to you? Get them out of here, because we are going to destroy this place. The outcry of the Lord against his people is so great that he has sent us to destroy it. So here you see the men don't even get to go and look in the square. From just what happened there outside of Lot's house, they know that God is going to destroy this place. And he's telling him, if you got other family members, take them with you. And the thing is about it is, as we realized in the last conversation with Lot and God, Abraham and God, they couldn't even get 10 people to come. So Lot went out and spoke to his sons-in-law who were pledged to marry his daughters. He said, hurry and get out of this place, because the Lord is about to destroy the city. But his sons-in-law thought he was joking. The same way the people thought that Noah was joking with the flood. And you see here, one of the things I want to clarify for you is that because they said sons-in-law does not mean that these men were totally married to Lot's daughters. They were not. They were betrothed, just like how Mary and Joseph, when Mary got pregnant with Jesus, she was betrothed to Joseph, but they were not fully married yet. Betrothal for them is different to what we call engagement. We call engagement, you could still break off the engagement and you don't have to get a divorce. It's like you've never anything happened. Whereas with betrothal, it is a more legal thing. And in order to break that betrothal, you have to be divorced. You have to go through the divorce proceedings to get that done. And so you see, these men were already more or less gone through that part of the thing with Lot's daughters, but yet they had not yet been fully married. And I can't remember if it's a year it takes after you're betrothed to someone, the marriage doesn't come to a year later or something like that. And then you see in chapter 15, with the coming of dawn, in verse 15, sorry, with the coming of dawn, the angels urged Lot, saying, "Hurry, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, or you will be swept away when the city is punished." And when he hesitated, the man grasped his hand in the hands of his wife and of his 2 daughters and led them safely out of the city, for the Lord was merciful to them. As soon as they had brought them out, one of them said, "Flee for your lives. Don't look back and don't stop anywhere in the plain. Flee to the mountains, or you will be swept away." So the angels telling the men telling Lot to flee to the hills, to the mountains, would have been fleeing toward Abraham, where Abraham was. And if you look at it theologically, it would have been a matter of Lot. If he had gone there, it would have shown that a level of repentance for his sins. It would have shown seeking to live like Abraham lived, as a faithful person toward God and following in Abraham's footsteps. But instead, Lot took the even opposite direction as he tried to get away even further from Abraham, and by essence further from God, by going south to Zoar, which in itself was, from what I think, it wasn't as bad as Sodom and Gomorrah, but may not have been all that good either. So you see that happening. Furthermore, what you also see coming out here is that Lot was hesitant to leave. If not for the angels, if not for those men, he probably would have been consumed by fire. The men had to actually push him and his family out, hold them and take them out. So again, it tells you the character of Lot, that he too was all intermingled in the cultural aspects and the wickedness of and that he was still attracted to this whole life of sin, in the midst of a life that was in the midst of sin. So you see that happening there with Lot. And so the men told him where to go. And in verse 18, it says, "But Lot said to them, 'No, my lords, please. Your servant has found favor in your eyes, and you have shown great kindness to me in sparing my life. But I can't flee to the mountains. This disaster will overtake me, and I'll die. Look, there is a town near enough to run to, and it is small. Let me flee to it. It is very small, isn't it? Then my life will be spared.' Now tell me honestly, you think God is sparing your life and pushing you out of Sodom? That if you had to go up to the mountains, God can take your life? Does that make sense, Lot? It doesn't. It doesn't. Because here is it. He's saying he doesn't want to flee to the mountains because the disaster will overtake him and he will die. The same Lord who has said, yes, Susan.
Well, do you think he was afraid he'd run into Abraham, who would...
He probably was afraid he would run into Abraham. He probably was afraid he would run into Abraham. I don't know what Abraham did to him that he wanted to keep so far away from Abraham. And as you will see toward the end, of this chapter, he does leave and go into the mountains, but nowhere near Abraham.
Okay. Afraid he'd judge him, probably. But anyway.
but it also not only Abraham, it shows you his relationship with God, that his relationship is God is very minuscule, if at all. And that is the crux of the matter. Because
Well, he doesn't trust God, right?
Mhm.
He doesn't trust God, apparently.
Well, for whatever reason,
Well,
he doesn't have right, he doesn't believe in God. He doesn't seem to have a belief or a trust in God because I mean, here is it that God has saved him, and yet he believes that he should not go up into the mountains. If God is saving you, you don't think he will save you from the disaster to go to the mountains? Of course he would. Why would you think not? So it just tells you his mindset as far as with God is concerned, his relationship with God is concerned. Um, um, and therefore it tells you about his life. He had a failed life. His life was not commitment. I mean, I even thought to myself, maybe it is, does he feel that if he has a committed life with God, he's given up his freedom, whatever he thinks the word freedom means? I wonder that. Yes, George.
I don't know why, but when I read this passage, I
Mhm.
thought Lot was afraid that he wasn't physically able to make it to the mountains. He thought he could only make it to the nearest town. I don't know why I read that into it. That's what
Yeah,
I
that's the
read.
way I read it too. I'm not, yeah, but
You
what
will
you're saying
realize that he
makes
does
more
go to the
sense.
mountains later on, so he is physically able.
Right, right. But he
He-
says this disaster will overtake me. So to me, that meant he couldn't run fast enough.
no, that meant that he did not want to go to the mountains, in my opinion.
Uh-huh.
Because as I've said, if God is willing enough to take you out of this,
I
why is
agree.
he going
Yeah.
to bring you out then to destroy you then with the same
Right,
disaster? It
right,
makes no sense.
right,
It makes absolutely no sense. And it just tells you about his own spiritual relationship with God, that he does not even realize that if God has saved him, that God will save him from the disaster if he went north. He's still thinking that it is him. He's putting it in his own strength instead of
right,
thinking about his relationship with God. So it tells
right.
you. Uh, so you owe me one, Pam, to saying that I said
Mhm.
he's a good man.
Yeah, absolutely. I
You
do.
can get
I do.
time.
I do absolutely. I confused you. I confused you with the commentary in this Bible site. Um yeah, I mean to me it's he doesn't trust in God. Therefore
Very,
he thinks
very
that he has to
true.
trust in his own speed. That's the way I read it like
That
George
is
did.
true. That is
That
true.
that he didn't believe he had enough speed and he didn't trust in God to protect him.
Well, whether or not he had enough speed, I am not going to go that far. But he did. But certainly he didn't trust in God. Period.
Right, right,
Full stop. He did not trust God. He cannot even fathom that God is the one who spared him, and that God will spare him again. So,
right.
because I mean, as I said, it didn't got nothing to do with because by the time they pushed him out, nothing had happened yet. He had no clue when it was going to happen. When you read it, it tells you this. In verse 16, when he hesitated, the men grasped his hand and the hands of his wife and of his two daughters and led them safely out of the city, for the Lord was merciful for them. Blah 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 blah. It is only when you get down to verse 21, 22, he says, he said to him, very well, I will, this is the man, the angel, very, very well, I will grant this request too. I will not overthrow the tongue you speak of, but flee. Is here? I will not overthrow the tongue that you speak of. It tells you already that this tongue ain't so good either. He
Right.
didn't even further. This tongue ain't that good either. I will not overthrow the tongue you speak of. But verse 22, but flee there quickly because I cannot do anything until you reach it. So, so, so they're not going to do anything until he's out of danger. They're not going to do anything. God is not going to do anything until out of danger. And then you see by the time Lot reached Zoar, the sun had risen over the land. Then the Lord rained down afterwards. So obviously, that the Lord is willing to to save him, which is obvious. Um, which is obvious. So as you could tell, Zor, something has gone wrong with my computer. My computer used to I can't remember how to do it. When I'm zooming, my head is cutting off. It will put me back into the picture, and I don't know where that has gone to. And don't remember, but I'll find it for next time. So then you see in verse 23, by the time Lot reached Zoar, the son of, and then in verse 24, then the Lord rained down burning sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord out of the heavens. Thus he overthrew those cities and the entire plain, including all those living in the cities, and also the vegetation in the land. But Lot's wife looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. So you see here, you see here that Lot's wife, she could not also bear to lose what they had, and she looked back, although the angel said to her, told them not to do so. I was going to say something else. And one of the things is too, I should mention about Zor. If you remember in Genesis chapter 14, when we read about Zor when they had that war, and you will know that Zor was also a kind of one of those cities who were in alliance with Sodom. They were all on the same side, so it also tells you what possibly was also going on in Zor. I mean, as I said, the text doesn't even mention Gomorrah at all, except for when it's being destroyed. But obviously, the closeness of the two cities, they were similar alike, and both of them went the same time. And it is quite possible that Zor could have gone too if Lot didn't decide to go there, because it appears as if it was Zor was only spared because of Lot going there. And the whole notion was to make sure that he is safe. So let's continue. And one of the other things I will say is that by going to Zor, he arrives there safely and he survives, but yet still he's not living a life of faithfulness to God. That is certainly not his intention at all. So that needs to be also mentioned.
Was Zor in the mountains?
No, it was also in the plains.
Okay, so he never
It was
did
just
it.
like Sodom and Gomorrah. They were on the plains, and Zor was also a city south of them on the plains. Correct.
Okay, so he never got there. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, they settled in the mountains. Well,
Yeah. But then it says here,
why is
then
it-
early the next morning, Abraham got up and returned to the place where he had stood before the Lord. He looked down toward Sodom and Gomorrah, toward all the land of the plain, and he saw dense smoke rising from the land like smoke from a furnace. So when God destroyed the cities of the plain, he remembered Abraham, and he brought Lot out of the catastrophe that overthrew the cities where Lot had lived. So you see there where by remembering Abraham, what God was doing was saving Lot for Abraham's sake, really, because of Abraham's faithfulness. And that was not for any act of righteousness on Lot's part, because there is nothing, the only thing that we could say here that Lot really did that could be constituted as righteous is that he was very hospitable to the men. We know that he did that, which is good. At least he learned something from Abraham. But the whole notion of his entire life is very questionable. And then in verse 30 to the end, it talks now Lot and his two daughters, they left Zor and they settled in the mountains, for they was afraid to stay in Zor. So now they went to Zor, which is the plains, and now decided, we need to move to the mountains. And it is believed that they decided to move to the mountains because it is felt that people in Zor think that the same thing would happen to them because of him leaving Sodom and what happened to Sodom. So they were afraid to stay in Zor because people did not like their presence in Zorah. They felt that they would probably be destroyed just like Sodom and Gomorrah was, and he came from there, and they probably knew that he was one of the big guys in the town. And this is what happened to them. He escaped. They don't even know why he escaped, but they know he escaped. Obviously not on anything of his own, but again, as I said, on Abraham, because of Abraham. But probably they felt that they could have been killed there. And therefore, what do? They decide that they will move to the mountains, but they do not go where Abraham is. They went to another part and settled in the mountains, and he and his daughters live in a cave. And then you see this whole notion of the older daughter saying to the younger daughter that they need to, there's no man around here to lie with us. So there was, whether it's a real remote place, because obviously Abraham, he was in the mountains too, but he had all his household and everybody with him. Whereas these girls don't have none of that. All they have is now their father and themselves. So they both decide that they're going to sleep with him and have children, drunken him and have children, and didn't, or a child at least, and didn't know what he was doing. And the first daughter did it, and then the second daughter decides to do it the next day. So I guess the children were born one day after the other.
Little incest here.
That is, yes, and there you see incest. And the thing is about it is, you will know is the Moabites and the Ammonites were enemies of Israelites. They were the enemies of the Israelites.
Right.
They were not. So it just goes to show you how greater the gravity of this thing becomes with this whole relationship between Abraham and Lot, because now these men, the children that came out from these women would be in hostility to the 12 tribes of Israel, and that's what happened. In fact, it was so grave that if you read, I think it is Deuteronomy chapter 23, you will find that the Moabites and the Ammonites, they were not even a part of the Sinai covenant until you get to the 10th generation. It was that much hostility and the way how these people were seen, these two tribes were seen, the Moabites and the Ammonites, which were descendants of Lot. They were not even a part of the Sinai covenant until they got into the 10th generation. So I guess the ones before were not worthy of it, I presume, of a covenant with God. Yes, Susan.
Well, who did they turn into? I mean, the Israelites were the Israelites, the Moabs and the
Moabites and the Ammonites.
Yeah, did they turn into a different country or a different nationality?
Yes, they were. I'm trying to think. I think we spoke about this earlier at some point. Were there the Arabs or something? I think one of them were. I don't remember now. You can you spot that for me, Pam?
Yeah, I think we did, but I can't.
Yeah,
So
I think
I was looking at Genesis 10 because I remembered other, let's say, nationalities coming up. The Japhethites, the Hamites,
the Jebusites, maybe
the Semites,
Mhm.
are all basically people who came from sons of sons of Noah, if you will.
Mhm. Mhm.
I guess sons of Noah. The Japhethites comes from Japheth. the son of Noah, the Hamites
Mhm.
from Ham, the son of Noah, and
Mhm.
the Shemites the same from Shem.
Mhm.
So these are different nations that
Yes.
They
that
never got
spread
along with
around
Israel. They never got
that
along.
spread ar-
Yeah. Okay.
well, yeah. I mean, just like when you have any family, right? Eventually it gets too big and there are factions.
Yeah, they still got,
Mhm.
okay. Thank you. Well, that pillar of salt, that kind of, they use that term a lot for people that are, I've heard that used for other things, like you're going to turn into a pillar of salt if you
Wait a minute,
do,
hold 1 second.
do
Let me,
something
hold
wrong.
1 second,
Okay.
Susan.
Okay.
I was I was on, oh gosh, now I'm gonna lose. I think I was on 10, Father.
Yes. I'm just reading something here. It seems to me that these Moabites and Ammonites live in what is modern day Jordan now. Um, that's where they are. They're east of the Dead Sea. In fact, I'll tell you, it is believed that where Sodom and Gomorrah were, that they're underneath the Dead Sea today. At least part of them,
Oh,
are under were destroyed and are now buried under the part of the Dead Sea. I think it was the southern part or the eastern part of the Dead Sea. I don't remember now. Um,
oh, thanks.
um,
What, the Moabites?
The last
mm,
mention of the Moabites as a civilization was by the Roman Jewish historian Josephus. Writing in the 1st century, Josephus said they were conquered by the Babylonians in the 6th century. What
mm.
did the Moabites were cursed after their king Balak attempt to have the diviner Balaam cast a curse on the Israelites? With the intercession of God, Balaam instead gave a blessing to the Israelites, and God cursed Balak and his people.
Mm. Um, um, and the other thing too about that actually, the Moabites, the Moabites, I know for sure. I can't remember if the Ammonites too, but the Moabites particularly integrated into the whole Israelite area because if you remember, Ruth in the Bible was a Moabite. She was a
Yeah,
Moabite.
the location according to this is east of the Dead Sea, south of
See,
the Arnon River.
yes, yes, it was east of the Dead Sea,
Okay.
Right,
and that's where Jordan is.
right. And the
That's where Jordan
Ammonites,
is.
that was where the Moabites lived, and the Ammonites were north of that. So
Hmm.
also Jordan, I assume. So
Hmm.
there wasn't there. I was reading about an alternative explanation of Lot's wife, and the wording in the original. I don't know whether it's Greek or not. And this particular interpretation says it's not that she turned into a pillar of salt. It's that she looked back and saw that the entire plain was covered in salt and everything was dead. It's just a different interpretation.
Yeah. Well, that
Um,
gives you the interpretation that she lived, but she didn't.
well, you don't know when she died.
Well, we know that, well, based on this, we know that she didn't go with Lot and his daughters.
Correct. You don't know when she
Hmm.
died, right?
Hmm.
Um, and well, this I'm just telling you what this interpretation is,
Understand that. I don't have
and
a
it
problem with that.
and it's and it's
Like
and
anything
it,
else, we
and
always pick
it's
it
and
apart.
it's specific about contrasting her view where she sees the destruction of the
Mm.
city versus Abraham's view, which sees the destruction of the people. And
Hmm.
it's talking about that juxtaposition
Hmm.
instead of that she was transfigured as a result of disobeying the angel.
Well,
And
I'm
there's
glad that I'm glad they mentioned the disobedience part because I was going to come to that. How do they deal with the whole disobedience?
right,
Because she was disobedient by looking back.
right. Or another way of reading that is by looking back, she slowed down and she was overtaken by
With by
by the destruction. You know, it's a
and there,
bomb, right? A
By the
bomb
fi-
goes
yeah,
off.
but yeah, you
If you
understand
could,
that. But
if
but still, what happened to her?
I don't know, who
That is the
knows,
point
right?
that I want to know what they're saying. What happened
No,
to her?
they don't talk about that. They just
Right.
talk about,
Nothing good, nothing good.
yeah,
Because and the reason why I say because and the reason why I asked that question, I find that question important, is because where is it? Um, right, but because by verse 30, there's no mention of her anymore.
correct.
So something happened to her.
Something happened to her, right? But
There's no
this, I
there's
mean,
no more
this
mention of her.
interpretation is all about, hey, you're looking at Sodom's selfishness juxtaposed with Abraham's humanity, right? Goodness, um,
Goodness, faithfulness.
faithfulness, right?
Mhm.
And anyway, it's an
Yeah, yeah.
interesting
But you see,
statement.
the whole thing about it is, the whole thing about it is, as when I think of Lot's story, I see Lot's story as here is a man who um, who lived in a what is classified as a sinful place, city. Um,
Right.
he did not do much at all to try to get it, or if he did, he either did not do much at all to try to get the people to change, or if he did, they certainly, as we know, I mean, he couldn't even have it from his own sons-in-law to be, he had no real authority or guidance in helping to change the place around. And I
Mm,
mean, if you were, I mean, oftentimes Sodom is compared to Nineveh, where even although the people there too were wicked, because of the king of Nineveh, he had authority and he got every single person, including even the animals, to repent,
mhm.
which is quite different to what Lot is able to do if Lot was one of the main major people in the city, which it appears he was. It shows that he um, precipitate. Well, maybe he didn't precipitate it, but he didn't try to stop it either, and that is a big difference between him and the king of Nineveh, um, where the king was able to repent, and all the people and even the animals were repenting. I mean, I found that so strange that the animals were even repenting in Nineveh, and the whole notion of the outcome was completely different to Sodom,
Right.
completely different to Sodom. So,
I find the last part of this unrealistic, that the daughters were able to bear children from their father when he was so drunk and didn't know what was going on. Somehow I just can't.
You think?
Huh?
You think?
Yeah, I
I
mean,
agree.
it's like,
I agree with you. Performance is difficult when they're that drunk.
it
right.
depends. It depends on how drunk he is.
Yeah, I guess
Well,
so.
so
It
drunk he
depends on
doesn't
how.
remember.
It
Huh?
depends on. Well, most likely, you'll be surprised. Look, this happened, you know.
You know what?
Listen,
You would be more
now
expert than
let
I
us
would be.
now let us.
I'll
We are
just say,
men. Y'all
I
are
don't have
women. Y'all,
equipment to know. I
y'all
don't
are
have
women. Y'all are
equipment
women.
to know.
Well, the daughters didn't even have a
I
name.
have to say, let George and myself talk here.
Yeah. Y'all figure it out. It's just fine.
We don't have to figure it out. We already know about it.
That's why they were cursed. Anyway.
But yeah, but no, I mean, it all depends on how drunk he is. But
Well, it said he didn't know what was going on, so
well, it said he didn't know. Wasn't it not when he wake up the next day? Um, right, he wasn't aware of it when she lay down or when she got up. Um,
Doesn't say he wasn't aware when she was doing something.
say that. That's true. He didn't say that.
Yeah.
Uh,
It is good to have a laugh. The
Yeah.
Lord has the
Yeah.
Lord has a sense of humor too. May I remind you?
we need to censor the Bible.
Hmm?
We have to censor the Bible, right?
It is what you said.
We have to censor the Bible.
The sense of the Bible.
I think it's on the book ban list.
yeah, I was going to say they'll be taking it out of the library.
You
Yeah,
never know. You never know.
especially
you
in
never know.
Florida. Especially in Florida.
Yes, George.
The very last line in my Bible says,
Mm-hmm.
he is the ancestor of the Ammonites of today.
Mm-hmm.
So does that have any implication as to when this was written, when today was?
Yeah. Yeah, it would.
I would
make
think
sense.
I would think so. But when that is, you mean when the book was written, you're talking
Yeah.
about, or when this part was written? I mean, there is a date as to when they believe Genesis was written, but I can't remember what that date is now. But I mean, each book in the Bible, there's an estimated date as to when it was written. Whether that date is, and I mean, most scholars, I mean, I should get that for you all and send it to you all, so you can see where from the Old Testament right down to the New Testament, the estimated time, the period they believe that the thing was written. Like, for example, they know that Mark's gospel was the first gospel to be written. John's gospel is the last to be written, and that sort of stuff. So, the gospels
That's
I'm
to
talking
talk about Q, right? The Q gospel. They talk about Q
mhm.
as possibly first before Mark as a source for Mark.
Yes, there's talk about that,
Talk
but the
about
fact remains. But I'm talking though when they come to the four gospels themselves, out of the Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Right.
Mark
Okay.
is the first. That's what I'm
Mark is
talking
the first.
about, and John
This
is the
says-
last.
This says modern scholars place the compilation around the 5th to 6th century BCE,
This is
during or after
Genesis.
the Babylonian exile.
Is
And it
Genesis, you mean?
Genesis, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And it incorporates earlier oral and written traditions from different sources.
Mhm.
That's modern scholarship.
Mhm.
Hypothesis. Of
Mhm.
course, the traditional view is that Moses wrote it
Mhm.
during Exodus, or
Mhm.
during Exodus.
Mhm.
But I don't know when are the
which is possible. However, we have a problem with the whole. Well, did he know of the whole Genesis and wrote about that as well? That is one of the things we have to think of. And certainly when it comes to Deuteronomy, he did not write all of Deuteronomy because he could not have written about his death. So you have that. Even if he wrote part of Deuteronomy, which is quite possible, he did not write it to the end, and therefore somebody else to add to that. I mean, that is why you'll find that most modern scholars will say that the books are attributed to Moses because he is the primary person in them when it comes to Exodus, Leviticus, and Deuteronomy. And Numbers. Numbers? Am I right? Yes, and Numbers, I think. Yeah, and Numbers. Right. So Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Moses spanned all four of those books. And And so it is quite possible he could have done it. I mean, he wasn't in those days, he would not have been a Fulbert because he raised up in the royal household and there should have been fairly educated. Being raised in the royal household. He was the Pharaoh's daughter's son in inverted commas. So he did have some kind of intellect. Um, so it is quite possible. It is quite possible. Others will tell you that it is a combination of people like the Yahwists and the Elohists and the Deuteronomists and the priestly writers and all of that too, all play their role in writing it. So
Okay.
yeah. Any questions? What a chapter.
I guess one more question. What happened to Lot? Is this the end of him in?
Yeah, I can't remember totally, but this will be, if there's any remnant of him afterwards, is probably when he dies. But really and truly, I can't remember right now because I've been going along with you all. But obviously, we are going to soon get into the whole birth of Isaac. He's going to be the next prominent person featuring in the book.
Chapter 20. Okay.
I think he's at chapter 21 when Isaac, and then you're going to get down to the whole notion of Sarah dying and Isaac and Rebecca and Abraham and all that sort of good stuff. So Abraham will die eventually and all of that.
Okay.
So we're going to get him now to the second of the ancestors, the great ancestors, which is Isaac, shortly. And then into Jacob later on, Jacob and Esau. So the time of Lot, if he isn't, I don't remember. I'm looking to see if I see anything with him.
I see it in the New Testament referring to this event.
Yes. Well, yes. But I mean, in terms of if there's anything more said about him in Genesis, I
don't think so.
I don't think so.
I don't see it.
But as I say,
if
it is very minuscule. The main story with Lot has to do with Sodom and Gomorrah.
Good. So we're done. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So yeah.
So chapter 20 next week?
Chapter 20 next week. That will be the last time we will have class until next year in January. Well, next year is really next month. So we will start.
My tree's up already. So.
I see that. I just actually, when I'm finished with you all, I'm going to start decorating. I have mine put up in terms of it's in the stand. But it doesn't have anything on it yet. So, but I came home this evening and got all the stuff, the decorations out. So my apartment is in a mess right now with all these boxes and decorations all over the place.
Play Mariah Carey, All I Want for Christmas.
Actually, I'm playing King's College Choir at Christmas and some others. That's what I'm playing. And actually, I'm playing it on vinyl, so that is good.
Yeah. No,
I'm playing it on vinyl. So it puts me, when I do this, it reminds me of my dad when he used to put up the tree and he would play records of Christmas music and that sort of stuff. So it brings me
much better than Mariah Carey. So.
Yes. Oh yes. I will listen to King's College Choir any day before Mariah Carey.
Our church said that on Christmas Eve they're going to on PBS, they're going to broadcast the National Choir from Wales.
Oh, okay.
So if I find out more about that, I'll let you know. Because
Sure.
Sounds beautiful. You know, they're going to rebroadcast it, so you might be able to listen to that.
Yeah.
I was going to say, traditionally, we never put our tree up until Christmas Eve, and my brother sat at the piano and played Christmas carols. Well, you know.
Mm-hmm.
We did.
That happened. Well, my parents, we never used to put up the Christmas tree to Christmas Eve either. That was, well, we didn't have a piano to
I
play
have a
music.
purple, I'll have
but-
to send you a picture, but I have a small tree with all purple decorations. To me, I have an Advent tree.
That's what you have.
Oh, I like to
This-
enjoy it for a long, yeah.
Yeah, Pam wanted to say something, but I was going to say too as well. This year, I'm dedicating my tree to my mom, so my tree is going to have only white or transparent balls on it, ornaments on
Very
it.
nice.
That's
Um,
beautiful. That's beautiful.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
You
So,
were going to say something, Pam?
Yeah, I didn't know whether I missed it. Did you say we are or we are not having Bible study next week?
We are having next week.
Okay, and then we're off for
I
Christmas
haven't
and
decided
New
when we will
Year's.
start back yet. Yes, I haven't started. I haven't decided when I will start back yet, but
January,
it will be in January.
Okay,
okay.
It will
all
be in
right.
January.
Probably, in other words, probably not the 7th.
No, it won't be that early. It will be probably mid to
After-
late.
Yeah, after the annual meeting,
Annual
hopefully.
meeting, correct, which is when I
Right.
usually do. Yes.
My
Yeah,
sister
okay.
will be down there. Linda will be down there then, so.
Oh,
Yeah.
good. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I may not be here next week because Charlie's got work in Princeton University and we'll be driving home from New Jersey on Wednesday. So if I get home in time, I'll be on the.
Okay. Okay. Well, do enjoy. Okay. Oh, somebody
Okay.
gone. Oh, where did Pam disappear? She's gone. All
Gotta
right. Have a good night,
go
everyone.
too. Say,
Okay,
Good
good
night.
night. Merry
Good
Christmas.
Good night.
everybody.
Nice.
See you. Bye.
Yes.
See you next week.
Bye.
okay. Fifth Sunday, fourth Sunday of Advent. Okay, bye.
No, this is
Bye.
the third Sunday of Advent coming, not the
Third
fourth.
Sunday.
Oh, okay.
This is Gaudette Sunday.
I gotta count my candles.
Pink
Okay.
Sunday.
Oh,
Pink,
yes.
you gotta wear pink.